When I left for spring break, my son played with Legos, made guns out of sticks, and enjoyed snuggling and sharing a book in bed before lights out. When I returned from spring break, my son was going out with Reagan, and he was sending and receiving, on average, 426 texts while I was gone. 426 a day. How did he have time to eat? How did he do anything else? What does it mean to go out when you're 12? Where do you go? And where did the Legos and sticks go? Parenting. Nothing more rewarding, frustrating, beautiful, enlightening. I have to be nice here or he won't help me make this presentation. When we adopted Luke, he weighed 8 pounds. He cost $2,000 a pound. We joke that his value has been decreasing ever since. Right now, if we just consider the adoption fees, he's valued at $160 a pound. But the experience has been invaluable. His birth mother placed him in my arms. I have no doubt that it was the bravest and most loving thing I will ever witness in my lifetime. I want my son to have a beautiful life, she told me. Now even when I'm scolding him for laundry on the floor, dishes left on the counter, and too much screen time, she's with me, reminding me, this child, he needs to have a beautiful life. I promised. Doug died climbing a mountain in the Tetons. Doug, so strong, so healthy, fun-loving, gentle, caring. Doug, he crouched down on one knee and listened to children as they shared their stories. He listened in a way that children knew that the world had stopped and that they had finally found someone who wasn't too busy to hear them. He listened to them with every cell in his body, and no one else mattered and nothing else mattered except for those two in that moment, sharing stories. Doug lived lovely, adventurous stories. Stories of campfires with songs sung off tune, while he sang too and played the guitar. Stories of desert rain, Himalayan journeys, nights out under the stars, swimming in half-frozen lakes, and mountains, many, many mountains. Then Doug died. He was climbing, he fell, and he was stuck, and it was cold, cold, too cold, so he died. I knew that people you loved died, but I didn't know it. I hadn't lived it until Doug. And then all I wanted to do was unlive it. And I learned that a heart can still beat, even when it's perforated. Motherfucking cocksucking white-ass whore! I held Maria Chipperino in a semi-effective restraint while she pounded her poetic message into my shin with her heel. Each syllable was emphasized by another blow. In truth, Maria used a few words that were worse than the ones I've stated here. They're too vulgar to speak. I only knew what half of those words meant at the time. During high school and college, I spent 5 summers working at Ramapo Anchorage Camp. The program served children living in difficult circumstances in New York City. While their kids attended camp for 2 months, the parents took parenting classes and tried to get their lives together. Some tried to get off drugs, others tried to get off the streets, some tried to find jobs. They all needed a break from the demands of parenting. Camp taught me how to give love when I'm cursed at, spit on, bitten, kicked, and called all kinds of new vocabulary words. I held those kids while they screamed their profanities until they were all screamed out. They screamed out the anger in them. Anger about the injustices of life, that they were too young to understand, but too old not to feel. They screamed, I held them, and I loved them. Camp also taught me gratitude. I worked with kids who lived in subway tunnels. They lived there. And kids who had to keep moving because the mob was after their family. And kids who showed up for camp with only the clothes they were wearing, because those were their only clothes. What a charmed life I had in comparison. Yes, camp taught me how to be grateful. You know those comic strips of Calvin and Hobbes where Calvin is trying to learn how to ride a bike and the bike attacks him? I was attacked by a wall mount drawing rack. My task was to hang the wooden rack in front of my heater so wet hats and mittens don't accumulate on the floor to dry after skiing. The rack had 4 stout wooden pegs on a narrow board with 2 holes to screw the rack into the wall. I got out my tools, an electric drill, a level, a pencil. I estimated the time to complete the task would be about 10 minutes. How hard could it be? Mark the wall so the rack will be level, drill some holes, screw the screws through the holes on the rack into the holes on the wall, and presto! In the short story is while I think of myself as a competent adult, there are some areas which I am less talented. I didn't know just how untalented I was in the area of drying rack hanging until I tried. It had seemed so straightforward. There were many incidents that contributed to my failure, but the most significant was that somehow the drill bit escaped the drill and stared at me from an unyielding position deep in my wall. It spoke to me. "You have no idea what you are doing, and this is not coming easily or naturally to you," the coat rack said. My attempt took over an hour and evoked lots of profanity. My outcome was a rack that dangled from the wall in such a way that anything hung on it would slip off the rack and land in a heap on the floor, the same heap on the floor that motivated me to hang the rack in the first place. Eventually, the rack was hung by a skilled carpenter in less than my predicted 10 minutes, and I was humbled. That was my most recent and obvious failure. I'm quite happy that I had the experience, so I can share with my students that sometimes nasty fractions can say to you, "You have no idea what you are doing, and this is not coming easily or naturally." And we have to be brave, and we may have to call in help, but if we keep working together on it, we can get it. I also can point out to my students that how wonderful it is that we have different talents. Otherwise, we'd have nowhere to hang our coats. I was 18 when I went on my first trip to Nepal. I took a college semester abroad. Before I signed up, I didn't know where Nepal was. Nepal changed my life. It's hard to explain just how. Was it the cows in the street? The fact that the entire country only had a single elevator at that time? Was it there had never been a homicide committed by using a gun? Was it the cheerful people? People who are cheerful despite their poverty? Was it subsistence living? Was it seeing how a small rural village with no electricity and running water can contain people who are more joyful than any group I had ever met? I had the opportunity to stay 3 weeks in a tiny out-of-the-way village, Roomchat. Most of the children there had never seen a foreigner. 4 of us went together. We were quite a spectacle. The people there were content. They lived with their extended families, grew their own food, and they sang. While I was there, I tried to understand how these people with no material wealth, little education, and substandard health care could be happier than people who lived in my upper-middle-class town in New Hampshire. I had the opportunity to return to Nepal 3 times. My most recent trip was last summer. I brought my son. We spent 2 months traveling through the mountains. My son was changed, just as I had been. On my recent trip, I was finally able to understand why I feel so at home in Nepal. Nepali culture is one that values people who are gentle, shy, and introverted. My son and I fit right in. Nepal has also given me the opportunity to study Buddhism. On my first trip, I was interested, but too restless. My most recent trip rekindled my curiosity. Attending Buddhist teachings has helped me have a calmer mind. Buddhism teaches that a calm mind is naturally more compassionate and clear. I feel blessed by the opportunity to receive teachings from a variety of Buddhist masters. What strikes me as I complete this project and reflect on learning is that it's impossible to anticipate how and when life will toss us a life lesson. Some lessons will bring great joys, others great suffering, and through all the ups and downs, I look to love to guide me. May all beings be peaceful and happy.